When my brother left the room, I thought it would be a good idea to move an old green lamp from my little red desk. As soon as I picked it up, I got a big shock in my head like an electric zap. Suddenly, everything went dark. It felt like I left my body and was being pulled up into the air. I found myself floating in a dark space, but it wasn't like a dream. It was like I became really light and could see everything clearly. I could hear sounds too, but not like music. It was more like the sounds of an organ, which reminded me of when my mom used to play. Maybe my brain was replaying those sounds during this strange experience. The sounds were pure and pleasant. I thought to myself, so this is what it's like. It's not scary at all. Actually, it feels really nice. I didn't feel any fear. In fact, it was quite enjoyable. I started seeing pictures like when you watch an old black and white movie. I saw images of my grandparents, even though my grandpa had passed away. I also saw pictures of my school, the North Sea, and my parents. There were big white letters all around me, like an alphabet soup. Some of the letters formed words. I remember seeing the words bike, Pierre, children, school, and some other words that I can't remember anymore. There were also words that I didn't understand. I felt great during this whole experience. I was satisfied and felt completely reassured. I was also curious about what was happening to me. As I looked into the darkness, I noticed a glowing light in the distance. It was incredibly powerful and hard to describe. It was like sunlight shining through a prism with all the colors mixed together. This light was more than just brightness. It had a special kind of strength. I felt drawn to it, but I couldn't tell if it was coming closer to me or if I was moving towards it. The closer it got, the more I felt an overwhelming love coming from it. This love was so amazing. I had never felt anything like it before, and I never would again. In the distance, I could see a person's shape in the light. I entered a tunnel with dark walls, but I wasn't scared. The tunnel felt soft and comforting. At the end of the tunnel, there was a blinding light and the person's silhouette. I really wanted to see who this person was. The attraction was so strong, and the love I felt was incredibly powerful. I was completely surrounded by the light. I saw a picture of my older brother and mother, and they didn't look well. They needed me. Suddenly, I felt torn between going towards the light and not coming back, or choosing to stay and live for my family. If I hadn't seen my mother and brother, I might have joined the light with the silhouette. I had a feeling that this silhouette was there to protect me, like a guardian. I talked to the being and said sorry for not being able to die and go with it. I had to go back home for my brother and mother. And then, the experience ended. I was suddenly thrown back into my body. It hurt, and I felt like my body was on fire. My mom and brother came into my room. My mom said, "At first we thought you were just playing a prank on us." But I was on the floor, shaking like crazy, and I had this lamp in my hands that were stuck to my face. My mom tried to touch me and got shocked. She had to wrap her hands in a cloth and unplug the lamp to make it stop. I suddenly snapped back into my body. It was hard to breathe, and my mom was still shaking me. She picked me up and put me on my bed. When I finally caught my breath, it felt like my lungs were on fire. I remember my red pantyhose were all wet because I peed myself. I was soaked and couldn't stop shaking. For the next month, I couldn't fall asleep because I was scared that some shadowy figure would come and get me in my sleep. It went on like that for months. Now I can sometimes see things that haven't even happened yet. It's like I can also see into the past of certain people. These images are so strong and freak me out. I can also feel other people's emotions way too much, and it's exhausting. I have too much empathy. Sometimes I feel this overwhelming joy and love, and I can't help but share it with others without even thinking. But some people think I'm trying to flirt with them, which is not true. I just want to be totally free and share the love. I don't need to be connected to people. I can just be there and do nothing, and it feels like it's shared all on its own. It's really hard to explain this feeling, and I can't find the right words. It's like it's beyond me, like it's not even me. This story was shared by Julie VP and happened in 1981. The tube in my arm was making my swelling worse as my body was shutting down. They brought in a roommate who needed to be watched too. I was sleeping when I suddenly woke up to her screaming for help. The nurses rushed in and took her away. Then I heard a soft sound like a cymbal and someone called my name. Until then, everyone only called me Mrs. and my last name. Next thing I knew, I felt like I was slowly floating up without any pain. It was so amazing. The lights around me were like the northern lights. As I moved up, I noticed a tiny black speck like a piece of pepper, but it seemed really out of place. I couldn't stop staring at it. The lights disappeared and I felt like I was lying on grass. I couldn't stop thinking about that black spot, and I just had to find out what it was. My pain came back and I felt so weak. I tried to crawl forward, but I could only move a little bit at a time. But every time I got closer, the spot got bigger. After what felt like forever, the shape in front of me started to look like a person. We both stopped for a moment, and then I took a deep breath and made myself move again. That's when the figure came closer to me. The ground lit up and I saw 2 arms reaching down towards me. When the hands opened up, I noticed big scars on them. I fell back, but I knew I had to look up higher. I gathered all my strength and lifted my head and upper body to see who it was. He was bending down a little, and I could see where the bright light was coming from. His face was so bright it almost took my breath away. That's when I realized I was looking at Jesus. I could see the edge of his clothes and his sandals. I remembered the story in the Bible about a lady who had been sick for a long time. She knew that if she could just touch Jesus, she would be healed. She fought through a crowd and reached out to touch him. He felt it and turned to tell her she was healed. I looked at the edge of his clothes and knew that I was going to be healed too. I reached out with my right arm and touched it. Suddenly, warmth spread through my whole body. The next thing I knew, I was in my bed and there was a soft glow at the end of it. I heard a gentle voice singing the song "I Saw a Man." It sounded like the version by Connie Smith. Then the nurses rushed into the room. The first nurse checked my vital signs and told the other nurse that everything was normal. The other nurse said, "Not bad for someone who just flatlined." All I could think about was that I really needed to use the bathroom right away. They laughed and took care of me. They kept me in the hospital for 3 more days to watch over me. The doctor told my husband to keep a close eye on me because I might still have some problems. He didn't really know what to say. Wow, it feels like forever since this crazy thing happened to me. The surgery I was supposed to have didn't even happen because my body didn't want to accept the medicine they gave me through the IV. And to make things worse, I ended up getting a bad infection. The doctors just kept me in the hospital to watch over me and make sure I was okay. The only thing I had to do after leaving was get the stitches taken out. The doctor told me I was super lucky. Back then, I didn't really talk about miracles or anything like that because people might have thought I was a little bit crazy. So I didn't say much to the doctor about what I experienced. But let me tell you, I was asked so many times to share my story in churches, and even there, some people didn't believe me. But I know what I saw. I saw Jesus, I was in heaven, and I was completely sane. Ever since I touched the hem of Jesus's garment, my health has been amazing. I saw his sandals and how hard he worked to heal me. His face was shining bright, and I knew for sure that I was with Jesus. Even skeptics can't say I was drugged because I didn't get any medicine at that time. I was 34 years old when all of this happened, and now I'm 82. My doctor is still amazed at how healthy I am for my age. Through all of this, I learned a really important message from a song. Jesus said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men to me." I've tried my best to do just that by loving Jesus and loving others. My life has been so blessed, and I've seen so many miracles during that time. It's been incredible. This story was shared by Darlene P. and happened in the 1970s.